SFJ 4x4 Studios presents
in my oversized four-wheel drive Jeeps.
a Jeep podcast starring industry experts.
Pure monosity. What? Say that again.
With mad scientist Scott Brown,
Use my drill press as a sword of blade.
our host Neil Simpson,
If one light goes out, they all go out.
filled with shenanigans.
We are really professional with Jeeps.
This is I Speak Jeep.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com. My name is Neil with Simpson Family Jeeps.
And he's sure of that.
I am very sure of it. Though I was thrown off because my signature goat
It wasn't there.
wasn't there.
I blame Jeff.
Jeff did a thing.
Yeah, I apparently did.
Jeff did a thing. I didn't get my goat this morning, but I got the most, like, the tiniest little head nod.
I
And
did give you a head nod.
It gave me, he wasn't looking at me. We didn't make eye contact, folks.
I did it. I did it at the camera.
He
so
did
that
it
you would
at
see
the
it on
camera.
screen.
So it's whatever. I'm going with
It's
it.
all fine.
I'm going with it.
Everything's fine.
We are doing some unique stuff in Grandma's Couch Studio. And so not only was last week our premiere, last week was our premiere of our new equipment, this big Adapt and Overcome that was, signature, call me Scott Brown,
Wow.
signature to us. But here we are, we're doing a live interview via the Zoomage or the streaming.
Which was also a challenge in itself, where we learned that our equipment didn't do well audio-wise with that setup. So
Yes, which
we
we
had
had a
to-
whole week of adapting and overcoming on the audio now.
yeah, and so yet again next week we'll have more equipment to try out.
Yeah.
But
I'm Neil. That's the mad scientist,
And that's Jeff.
the producer, who is furiously clicking away. And
He
we
has
are
so many buttons now.
He has so much. I mean, this is like, they
wait till
talk
next
about
week.
You talk about key carrying complex. Like Jeff has got like a dial complex. At
Yes.
this point in time, we have so many mixer boards and digital interfaces and cords. The cord management in here is
Thankfully, we got it
making my
under
eye twitch.
control. And then he added
and then
double
he
the
added
amount.
Double the amount.
it's fine.
temporary solutions.
But we're joined on air today. So for those of you who are listening in your ear holes at a later date, first and foremost, understand that you can always join us in the comment box on the live on YouTube or Facebook at 10:19 most Mondays. But as you're listening, we are actually joined remotely by Patti Jo from the Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival. And we're going to be grilling her like hardcore journalists today.
It's a Monday, guys. Be easy.
We're bringing the heat. We're going to bring the heat. We're going to ask the tough questions that America wants to know.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I did send her the questions ahead of time, and then I promptly in the email said, "It's a loose guide. We may not follow it."
we don't follow rules very well.
Goodness.
I mean, I could probably go right through the questions, bam, 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 but then Neil's going to be like, "Oh, squirrel over here. By the way, what about this?"
I am going to mention for the folks listening at home that we will, as usual, be doing our weekend updates at the end of the program. So if you like that part of it, hang in there through the outro, and we'll be talking about our cool things we did or didn't do over the weekend. So we'll keep you posted on that. I am looking forward to today. If you need a little primer, Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival is at this time one of, still arguably one of the foremost large Jeep events in the country, but certainly east of the Mississippi. We have this great kind of heartland of where the Jeep was conceptualized, like we talked about last week with the Bantam Car Company. And this heartland of where the Jeep was conceptualized to where it was built right here in this Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan-esque area. And this festival started some years ago, which Patti Jo will elaborate on for us, hopefully. And it's going to be coming up here. And how long?
Oh, just a little over 4 weeks. We're in real serious countdown mode now.
I think I just puked in my mouth. A little bit,
Not-
Patty Jo. I
I'm not-
wasn't ready for.
I'm not
4
ready
weeks.
for 4 weeks.
I wasn't ready
That's
for 4 weeks.
it's just
That-
around the corner. In the comments, real fast, I got Coleslaw saying good morning, SFJ. So Coleslaw is first.
coleslaw. Yeah. Coleslaw.
Family is away off road says good morning. Andrew says good morning. Bill McWilliams says good morning. And turkey hunting and SFJ 4x4 kind of morning.
Perfect.
That was to your gobble at the beginning when you messed up your words.
No, well, maybe. I did see a bunch of our listeners and friends of the business are out turkey hunting right now. So best of luck to you guys. So
We'll try to be quiet.
There's actually more. That was apparently just YouTube comments.
Oh dear.
So there's also.
oh, I think you took Nathan's.
Nate was actually first on Facebook with good morning.
He was
so
panicking.
Nate was about to send an angry email to Jeff.
you know he was. He probably already hit
You
send.
should anyways, Nate. You should.
Daddy Jeep said sup. Joe O'Brien says morning. Billy Joe says good morning. Rob is saying hi to Patti Jo. And we've got who else did I miss? Charles saying good morning from Texas. Nate is saying he can't wait. It's his first year volunteering.
Excellent. We
For
need good
Bantam.
volunteers.
Giaga Jeeper said good morning. And then Charles said that we missed a great event in Mason, Texas for wheeling for the wounded. And he wants to get us down there for 1 year.
Oh, that sounds awesome, Charles. We may have to explore that in the near future
Where's Mason, Texas?
in Texas. There
Do
you
you,
go,
you do
Jeffrey.
realize Texas,
Oh!
Texas is bigger than like 6 of the states around us?
You know
combined.
what? You didn't specify your prioritization. of
Where
location.
in Mason or where in Texas is Mason? Anybody know?
No.
I don't either. I'm not familiar with that town. I've been to a lot of towns.
Charles will let us know. Charles will let us know. Are you going to read Nathan's?
Nate said that's Bantam Jeep Fair has. I'm talking like you now. Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival. It's pretty much how I got into off-roading. Been going since 2018. And then Jeannie is saying good morning. It turns out that she can still win trophies without Cookie Monster.
Oh, nice. It sounds like the Minion must have done well somewhere.
Right. And then north of Austin. Okay.
Oh, I could go for a visit to Austin.
Right.
I did just absolutely without question look up cheap tickets to Houston over the weekend. Just kind of the spirit moved me, and I was like, I wonder. I've never been to Texas, so I was like,
Oh,
well,
really?
maybe I'll just fly into Houston.
I heard it's not raining there.
What?
That's when I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go.
Can I ask why you chose to fly into Houston of all places?
Honestly, well, this is a complete sideball, but they had a world-renowned trumpeter who was going to be in Houston playing
Okay.
with the Houston Symphony.
Okay.
And my son's a trumpet player, and
Yeah.
he loves that music. So I thought, I wonder how cheap I can get into this symphony and to the.
$100 for a ticket to fly there?
That's what I was thinking. Like, yeah, if I can get $100 for a ticket, stop in, go to a show, sleep on the street with my 12-year-old. Happy birthday to him today.
Oh.
And then
Yep.
fly home.
You have to be careful flying into Texas. It's not like other states. You can't just pick a nearby city and think that you're going to actually be able to drive there because you might be driving 8 hours.
Perfect.
That's fair.
Perfect. All right, we're here to talk about Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival, and we have a very special guest with us, and Ms. Patti Jo, longtime event organizer of Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival. What do you have to say for yourself? This is my interview. Do you like that?
That's a great question, Neil.
Just trying to crack up over here.
I ask myself
Almost
that
lost the
question
couple.
every day. Gosh, I've been working on this festival since 2009, 2 years before our first one. And sometimes I'm like, am I crazy? Like, why am I still doing this? Like, this is crazy.
Mhm.
But, hanging out with people like you guys and all of our other attendees and volunteers and other sponsors and vendors, it's what brings everybody back. It's all the fun relationships that we've built over the years.
Sure.
So you said you started working on it 2 years before the first event.
I did. At the time, I was working with the Butler County Tourism Convention Bureau, and our president said to me, "Hey, Patti Jo, we need to take advantage of our Jeep history here in Butler County. What can we do?" And I was a little clueless. I'm not from Butler County, so I didn't even know about the Jeep history at the time. And I was like, well, he's like, I think we should have a Jeep event. And I'm like, well, what's a Jeep event? And he's like, I don't know. You need to figure it out. So I spent 2 years trying to figure it out before we had our first one, and went to some other events. Although at the time, there weren't many Jeep events to even go to back then. So, I tried to figure it out, and, I'm still figuring it out. Every year we try to do something different, something more fun to make Bantam just a great experience for everyone who comes.
So I'm going to take this as an opportunity to squirrel and our fork in the road of sorts, because it's my understanding you were an event planner prior. Is that correct?
Actually, no, I
Okay.
did public relations. I worked for a big agency in Pittsburgh at the time. So event planning was just a little bit of what I did, but
Okay.
the whole kind of general marketing communications, media relations was really what my specialty was back then.
And so this is where our fork in the road. And so, like, as diehard enthusiasts, myself and Scott, we were the people who were attending these known events at the time. And so, what Patti Jo is sharing is that the dynamic of how these events as we know it. So many of our listening base has gotten into Jeeps just within the last decade or so, or maybe really expanded upon their enthusiasm. And it is one of the challenges that there does seems to be people who cycle in and out of their kind of enthusiasm, their love of the Jeep culture, the Jeep life. But we were there, right? I mean, both in flesh and mentality at that point, and we were going to a number of the air quotes, long-standing events. None of them quite had the dynamic or approach that Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival, came on with.
I think the funniest part is we thought those were big shows
Correct.
back then, and then we went to a big show.
Correct. That's exactly right. Right. And that was the thing, is that big shows at that time, folks, and probably one of the longest standing running shows was at that time PA All Breeds. And a number of shows had been sustaining probably 10 years prior to Bantam, 10 to 15. And of course, Easter Jeep Safari is domestically the largest long-standing event to my knowledge. Jeep Jamborees were a traveling event, if you
Right.
will, but a lot of things were very organic or kind of regional. And I think that what was unique was Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival hit the seam of this, what I would call national shows.
I think the coolest part about Bantam is it allows the novice to get to go and experience a big national type show and do a little bit of everything without any kind of, oh, I need to go do this or I need to go do that. Where like growing up in the Jeep scene, JJUSA's, you had to like be all set up and you had to have these tow points and all this stuff. I remember reading in the magazines like, oh, I'm not
not there.
prepared
Right, I'm not
to
there.
do that. So it's kind of cool to see where Bantam fills that void where you have the JJUSA enthusiasts there. You
Right.
have, I just bought my Jeep last week and
Yep.
I'm here. I
Yep.
wanted to see what it's about. What is this life?
Right.
And I think that's kind of neat in that. And I'll purveyor of big automotive shows growing up to go to ones in Columbus and other places for classic cars. I think you can be proud to say you have a great event that rivals these other ones that are 25 years, 30 years going, and they have tons of shows across the country. So they have a well-oiled machine.
Right.
So I think you got to give yourself a little pat on the back, Patti Jo. You do a good job.
Well,
thank
and
you.
my question then is, you kind of started to touch on the origin of it a little bit, but let's talk about the origin story and how it's evolved, how we got to what we are today.
Sure. So the American Bantam Car Company was a car company in Butler, back in the 30s, 40s. There was actually several companies who built automobiles in Butler at the time. And that company was really the only one who submitted an RFP to the Army's desire to replace the horse. They wanted a utilitarian vehicle, and they put out an RFP. The American Bantam Car Company was the only one who responded. They had 40 days to build a prototype. based upon the Army's deadline. They delivered that prototype. They brought in some people from Detroit. There's some really great behind the scenes stories about these individuals who came to Butler and basically worked around the clock for 40 days. And they built this Jeep and they called it the the Bantam reconnaissance car. And so they drove that reconnaissance car to Maryland, to the Army to let them test it. They did test it. They put it through all kinds of crazy things, and eventually it got destroyed. But the winning part of it was that Bantam did win the contract. They liked the reconnaissance car at the time, which became known as the Jeep, and that put Butler on the map as the birthplace of the Jeep. And that is why we really created the Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival, to celebrate that Jeep heritage that we have here in Butler County.
So how is it for the event? Like what did you do the first year versus what do you offer now as an event?
Oh my God, Jeffrey, that was huge. Oh yeah, go ahead and chronicleize. I don't know, 14 years. All right, so first of all, let's get this out of the way. Let's get this out of the way. What year is this? Give or take COVID.
Yeah.
This is the 14th. If we had not had to cancel because of COVID, it would be 15, but this is 14.
Okay. 15 in our hearts, 14 in our pocketbooks. As far as which 2009, you're working on an event, right? What was your thought process of what that event was going to be?
I'll be, PA, you talked about the Albright's Jeep show. That was one of the shows I went to. And that's kind of where the light bulb went off. When I kind of saw, they had an obstacle course there, and I saw that my dad was into Mustangs. So I was used to going to car shows. So I knew, like what a show and shine, so to speak, was at the time. But I knew we wanted to be different. We wanted to be bigger. We wanted to be more than just an obstacle course and vendors and a show and shine. And so I took the inspiration that I learned there. I also went to some other Jeep events, and I researched other car events, not necessarily Jeeps, but just car events, to try to figure out what makes an all-encompassing festival. We knew obviously we had to celebrate our Jeep history. That was certainly a component of what we were doing. So, we created our Jeep history exhibit, which is still flourishing today. And it's something that people really like to come and see when they're at Bantam. But we knew we wanted to have some off-road experiences. And our first location was the Big Butler Fairgrounds. And they did have a little patch of woods that we used for some trail rides back then. But it became very clear by year 2 that
the State Highway Patrol was not about that.
Yeah.
Do you remember that, Patti Jo? Do you remember that?
I do. No,
I feel like you remember that.
I remember that because it was like we all got in trouble. Like it was like when the principal yells at the classroom, but like across the Big Butler Fairgrounds, like it was like this whisper of like, if you drive with muddy tires down 422, which for folks who are out there in the world, this is a fairly rural highway. But the little patch that we were driving on from the trail to the fairgrounds, they were just writing tickets. It was the State Highway Patrol revenue weekend, along with Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival.
I think in their defense, though, they had this good idea of having the parade and everything, kind of getting that Guinness book. I remember being there as part of that, and everybody was so excited. They had no idea how many Jeeps were going to get excited and show up.
Yeah,
that's true.
And so suddenly we had small town Butler gridlocked with Jeeps forever.
Right. I think small town Butler was not prepared for how weird the Jeep community is.
That's true too. As I remember being excited, I like vintage vehicles, but at that time I was driving pre Chuck Norris.
Yes.
So 2004. So we were in the, I think it was a college, and we were set up in parking lots by vintage.
Yes.
So I was in the early 2000s parking lot, and I was like, I want to go see, early Jeeps. So I walked from where we parked downtown all the way to the end. And by then, all the people with Willie's vehicles and Bantams and that kind of stuff were like, hey, we've been here for like 4 hours. Peace. I'm out. There was like one lonely Jeep left.
Oh gosh. All right. So we're at the Big Butler Fairgrounds, right? It's kind of famous, actually, both in Pennsylvania and abroad of sorts, because it's a neat location. They do a lot of interesting stuff. And so that's where the initial 2-3 years was.
The first two were there, and
Yep.
we quickly realized how we grew out of that location. And that's when we moved to Cooper's Lake Campground near Slippery Rock, and that's where we still are today.
Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about where we are today, breaking down Jeffrey's, line of question is, how do you feel, as far as those offerings contrast now versus those initial, those lean days of the Big Butler Fairgrounds?
Yeah, we really didn't know what we were doing back then.
We still don't know what we're doing,
I
Patti
was
Jo.
gonna
I just show up every day.
I just
You know,
know we're
when I-
showing a
when I-
golf cart every year.
I literally said that's why you wouldn't come actually up in person, because you were afraid we were going to steal your vehicle.
We have some good stories between golf cart stealing and Wynn taking tents away in the middle of an interview.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
that happened.
Those are things. Those are things.
But yeah, I mean, the festival's just totally, exploded since those first 2 years. It's actually funny. We had a helicopter there. I don't even remember why, but back in 2013, our first year at Cooper's Lake, there was a helicopter there who was giving rides. And I went up in the helicopter.
You want to ride the helicopter? Is that why you remember?
I was right. My friggin' booth was right next to it. So every time the helicopter would take off, we'd have to hold the tent. And it's like I might as well have been at the shop. It was like when a train goes by, the customers try to talk to me. Well, we got to wait for the helicopter at the Jeep show. People would stop and they look at, why is the helicopter there? I don't know, but I'll take a ride in it. I wanted a ride.
So how do you really feel about this helicopter?
Yeah, I don't even remember why the helicopter was there, but I went up.
No, nobody does. It was like
I know.
it was like a Mandela effect. People are like, why was there a helicopter there? I don't know. Somebody's bright idea.
Yeah, it could have been mine. I don't even remember. But you notice there's no helicopter anymore. So
Well,
we learned our
I'm
lesson.
disappointed. I still haven't got a ride at the Jeep show helicopter.
Oh,
All right.
But
So,
anyway,
anyways, there
we
was a
went
helicopter
up.
there.
I took a bunch of pictures when we were up above, and actually saw those not that long ago, and I was like, oh my gosh, like our vendor area was just such a tiny little area compared to what it is now. And
Mhm.
we've really been able to maximize the property out there with all the different things that we have. So it's pretty amazing when you think back to what it was. And we thought we were doing a great thing back then, and we had over 1,000 Jeeps the very first year, which is kind of unheard of. At least
Sure.
back then, it was completely unheard of to have that many Jeeps come to a brand new event that had never been attended by anybody before. So, that Guinness parade that you talked about, that was it was a really smart thing that we did, because everybody wanted to be part of a Guinness World Record. And so that's what put us on the map. And that's what really created the enthusiasm and the excitement for Bantam.
Have you thought about trying it again to break the current record?
No.
Fair. Just leave it at that. That's fine. So
Fair.
I don't blame
I
you one
will
bit.
mention for perspective again, as folks who were there, most of these large scale Jeep shows, which we were attending, were a capacity of 300 to 500 Jeeps regionally. So when Patti Jo says 1,000, again, we're familiar with Smoky Mountain and Jeep Beach and Sheriff's Jeep Festival and a number of others that have blossomed into these multi-thousand participant Jeep events. At that time, 300 to 500 was kind of
That was a big event.
that was a big event in by region, you know. So she's absolutely accurate, and I think it's fascinating the parade situation, which was such a tremendous undertaking, and both for the organizers, for the participants, because we had Jeeps overheating left and right and breaking down, and then also for the town, because I remember it went hours and hours and hours.
I mean, at the point when I did not see old Jeeps and came back, they were still parking vehicles.
Right.
And I then understood why nobody was back there, because they were all tired at this point to go home.
Right. And so that was a very big deal. But for those folks, it's one of the things that I think is fascinating, how many Jeeps come in still to our facility who either are under their current ownership, have their placard that says this Jeep was part of the Guinness record, or I think is interesting is how many Jeeps have been sold under new ownership, and I see that Jeep come in with some sticker or placard indicating, and people are very proud of that. It's
Mhm.
kind of a fun thing.
They really are. We still actually get requests from people that, they sold their Jeep and they want a new one because they were still there, and we don't have them anymore, of course, but, it is interesting when we get those calls. And then, of course, we were silly enough that we did that parade again in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget, Jeep Beach beat us in 2015, and their event was in April. Our event was in June. We were planning all along that we were going to have another parade because it was our 5th year at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what we were going to do to celebrate our 5th anniversary. So all along we were going forward. We just thought we had to break our original record, which was like, I think 11:06, if I'm not mistaken. And then G Beach comes along and boom, they just kind of like decided they were going to, break the record. And so there was a lot of stress going on with some of us, like, oh my gosh, here we thought we were going to beat our record, and now we were going to have to beat a record that they set, because we knew how big that event was at that point and that they would easily break our record. And I can remember being very competitive about that.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So at the end of Jeep Beach, I had an advertising campaign going out in Florida that said, we can't let the beach beat the birthplace.
Right.
And we put that campaign in motion for 2 months, and we did beat the beach. It was 2,420 Jeeps, and I think their record was like 1,800 or something like that. So it was really a great day. I was standing on the courthouse steps and with the sheriff who was doing the official counting as the Jeeps would pass the courthouse. And when we hit their number, I was just like doing a little happy dance. And then when we finally got our last Jeep in and we knew that number is 2,420, it was quite an accomplishment. It was a great day.
And exhausting, I'm sure.
That too.
Yeah, a long time to count.
People don't realize, most events, most public community events, what we do for the invasion is their entire event. And that's just one part of our 3 days of events that we have. So it's like its own event within another huge event. So there's a lot of work that goes in, and coordination and logistics and just all the details that we have to go through to make sure that everything works as smoothly as we can possibly make it. And, trying to get 1,000 Jeeps in a small town in a short amount of time, that's a challenge. But I think we've really fine-tuned our processes, and I think we do the best we possibly can with that kind of numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. What are some things from behind the scenes, things that it takes to do that, since you're bringing up that difference with the invasion?
Well, most people don't realize that it takes an entire year to plan the festival. Once we finish things up, we try our darndest to get everything done, all of our final reports, our invoicing, accounting, everything done, everything put away, prizes shipped, just everything by June 30th. And then we kind of take a little bit of a break, and then we start thinking about, well, what's going on next year? What are we going to do different for next year? We literally do surveys of our volunteers, our participants, and our planning committee. And I need to talk to you about them a little bit, but we take everybody's feedback and we compile it all together. And we compile it by activity. And that's kind of the guide that we use when we're planning the next year's event. We look at what suggestions did people have, what new things can we offer? What can we do better? And we really work through that feedback very strategically to try to figure out how can we continue to make Bantam even better than the previous year. And that's really been our the way that we go about things, and that feedback document and those comments and things that we get from everyone is really important to us. And we take it seriously. We really do read through everything. We have like a 30-page document. And in fact, I just went through it a month ago just to see, are there things from a logistics perspective now that we're getting close to the festival? What are some things that we still need to keep in mind based upon what people told us? But we work year round. We have an awesome planning committee. We meet every single month. And this committee is really who manages pretty much all of the activities that we have happening at Bantam. So they're our managers, and they take responsibility for their event, for improving it, for changes that they want to make. And that's really how everything comes together. It's because of this planning committee, their dedication to what we do. And then, of course, the over 500 volunteers who help pull it all off during the actual weekend.
It's a lot of volunteers. So Neil's mom's actually asking, is this a full-time paid position then?
Yes, there are 3 of us who do work as a paid position for the festival. We're not all full time, but we do work year round. And then, of course, in 2020, whenever we couldn't have the festival, we introduced Bantam Trail Fest, which takes place at the second weekend of October. So that's a whole nother one. So really, as soon as we end June 30th and we get Bantam wrapped up, we're thinking about the next year's Bantam, but we're also working on Trail Fest at the exact same time and getting that ready to launch.
That's an elaborate group of people it takes to pull that off. It was
They're
just,
very.
Go ahead.
I was just saying they're very passionate. They love Bantam, and we just all work together. And now we're really kind of like this fine-tuned machine. Everybody knows what they need to do, and they do it well. And considering that we have an event that's attended by thousands and thousands of people, and it's attended by more than 2,000 moving vehicles, there's a lot of things that have to take into play, and a lot of the logistics that we had to plan out for safety, for traffic flow, so we don't block up the local roads. There's just, like you mentioned at the fairgrounds, and we have mud everywhere. We have street cleaners because of mud. We really do that. So there's just so much that goes into it that it's just really overwhelming. We have a task list that starts in October and goes through June for this event. And when you look at it at the beginning of the year, you're like, oh my gosh, how are we ever going to get all this done? But somehow, some way we do it.
That's awesome. And there is a lot of hidden things in that planning that most people just don't think about or realize, all the way down to security, like you said, the logistics of the roads. There's a lot of planning that you have to do with multi-organizations, not just within your own organization.
Yes, we rely on, the sheriff's department, the city police department, state police. I have relationships with all of them. So I always laugh with everybody and say, if I ever have a problem in Butler County, I know all the right people to get me out of it. Not that I've ever done that, but it's always nice to have some friends in those places.
Right.
But between them, you're right. Security, township permits, city permits, PennDOT permits. There's a lot that we have to do at the beginning of the year as we start to plan, just to get all of the official things done with all of those entities that we have to do. And then we work with over 14 local organizations, all nonprofits, and they help us execute a lot of the festival as well. So it's a win-win partnership for us and all those other nonprofits that we support.
Well, and speaking of permits, I know like anything raffle wise, PA's got the gambling laws, so you got to have those permits. There's a lot of things that just people don't think about. I can't imagine the size festival that you do.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's really one of those things that you don't sleep this time of year very well because there's always things that pop into your head. I always have a piece of paper and a pen on my nightstand, which sounds crazy, but I do, because all these things that I'm like, oh my gosh, we forgot to do this. We have to do this tomorrow, and I just wake up enough to jot it down that I can read it the next morning and, then go on. But that's really kind of how those things happen. It's just, we always say that during the month of May and June, we eat and we don't sleep. It's all Jeep. So there's just a lot to consider.
What do you got for other questions?
No, I mean I thought you were asking the hard questions. I was just hearing. I'm just enjoying the process at this point.
I don't know.
You're really so Jeffrey, and whether Patti Jo, you might not know this. Jeffrey started a nonprofit a couple of years ago, so he gets very excited about specific nonprofit oversight, if you will. And he is in his 3rd year pulling off a large scale music festival to the north of you in Erie. So
awesome.
it's something of personal interest to him.
Well, and there's just a lot of challenges. That's why I was asking what kind of challenges you have, because when you're doing that for the first time, you're like, oh, I didn't realize I needed to do this, or oh, I didn't realize this, and you have to work with all these different agencies and organizations. The permitting, it's just insane.
And they all have to work with each other.
Right.
Because recently, Jeffrey was given the permit But then recently, one of the organizations who has their hand in the permit giving was like, well, we didn't actually rubber stamp it ourselves. And he's like, well, I'm already holding the permit, you know? And I'm sure you've never experienced that, Patti Jo, where somebody needs
You
to
know,
justify their job.
I can't. Unfortunately, I can't say that. We've had so
Okay.
much cooperation and so much support. I mean, it's crazy. Like last year, we created something new for the invasion. We have a north and a south staging area, so all the Jeeps need to go to their preferred staging area where they registered, and then we let them out to go into downtown in a very organized fashion, and that's all coordinated with the police departments and our local organizations at those locations. And last year, especially for our north location, which is on Route 8. And both of these locations are about 4 miles either north or south of downtown. So the north location, which is at our Butler Flea Market, I was really concerned about having 600 Jeeps pulling out on Route 8 South and trying to keep them in groups of, 15, 20 together at a time and let those 15 go and then, let regular traffic flow and let another 15 go and so on. And, I was raising my concerns to the state police, and they were like, yeah, we just don't know that we can staff it. We're just not sure what we can do that day. We have this, and this to cover. And I was like, okay. So, I rang up my good friend, the sheriff, and said, hey, I really need you. Can you have a deputy cover this for just a couple hours just to make sure all the Jeeps get out safely? Because, as a logistics and event director, you always think about what could happen that you don't want to have happen.
Mhm.
And, having an accident as a group of Jeeps were pulling out was definitely at the forefront of my mind. And so, the sheriff agreed to cover it and help us. And lo and behold, because I had already been on with the state police multiple times, the state police were just kind of cruising along to kind of see how things were flowing. And of course, the sheriff's deputy and the state police officer knew each other. So they just decided they were just going to tag team it and they were just going to get the Jeeps out. And
Cool.
so that kind of cooperation that was not expected is what really makes this community really great, because they all support what we do.
That is awesome. I'm so glad, because I know that, as a whole, you're not always going to win everybody over in general, but it's I think where I'm going to go with this next conversation is very much a community centered piece, because I do want you to expand a little bit more on that invasion. And I heard you a little bit ago talk about the invasion itself is oftentimes other people's entirety of their event, right? Which the invasion is just one small piece, maybe an eighth, even maybe a 16th of what Bantam brings to the table. And now you're talking about the logistics of staging and coming and going and whatnot. So can you kind of expand upon maybe that concept of the downtown invasion? I kind of remember when that was conceptualized many moons ago, and how it's kind of what it's kind of changed into.
Yeah, the invasion, it really is most people's most favorite part of the event, having 1,000 Jeeps all parked within about a mile on Main Street and some side streets, and just being able to walk down and see everybody's Jeeps and see how they've customized them and decorated them, all the fun things that people do to their Jeeps. It's really, I call it the best Jeep party anywhere in the United States. We've had lots of people copy the name of our Jeep invasion. There's many Jeep invasions now, but we're the
you
original.
got so fired up. You got so fired up, and I'm totally interrupting you, which I always get yelled at by Jeffrey, the producer, and Savage, the also media, editing stuff. I'm not allowed to interrupt, but here I am. You got so fired up, and you and I were actually on the phone. I don't expect you to remember this, but the pedantic peculiarity of the way my brain works. The moment a particular group launched their invasion, you and I happened to be on the phone together. I was not at the physical shop. I kind of exactly remember where it was. And you were like beside yourself, and you were kind of like, are they allowed to do that? Like you weren't actually asking me, but it was like this processing out loud. And it was like, you were just, how dare they infringe on our invasion, And it's fair. It's fair,
100%.
So I interrupted you. I promise. I apologize, but all right,
No,
go on with it.
And there's many Jeep invasions now. So, I just have to consider that that is a flattery kind of thing that they want to
Absolutely.
be an invasion like us. But yes,
Yes.
you were right. I was a little fired up that day. And I do remember that day because, yeah, there's certain things that I'm very passionate about and, about this event. And, well, you have to be passionate about the event as a whole to continue to do this long. But, yeah, that was one of those moments. But, the invasion has morphed. We've morphed it because we used to put 1,400 Jeeps downtown. And then a lot of people did not like to park on the side streets. For some reason, everybody wants to be on Main Street. And so what we did was we're like, yeah, but there's so many people who want to be part of this. We can't help it. We can't put every Jeep on Main Street. So we did cut back the number of Jeeps to 1,300, or I'm sorry, to 1,000. And now we only use 2 side streets. And those are right in the center of town. And it is kind of interesting and somewhat frustrating that we still get a lot of people who complain about being on the side streets. They do not want to be on the side streets because Main Street is where it's at. But the only way we can do that is to continue to make less people be able to be part of the invasion. And our planning committee feels really strongly we want to allow as many people to be part of it as we can. So, we've just kind of streamlined it and made those 2 side streets be central. And that's kind of how we do it. But there's been some really fun things that we've done during the invasion in the past between different DJs that we have. Last year was the Jeep sculpture. The Butler Rotary and Butler Downtown partnered together and they made a Bantam replica sculpture. And that is now a permanent highlight, a permanent attraction in downtown Butler. And we unveiled that with them during the invasion last year. So that was a fun thing. We've done things with our local businesses. The Butler Arts Center in the past have had special activities happen. The Penn Theater, they did a duck signing last year. So we really try to get the community involved as much as we can. And it's really interesting that so many people want to be part of it from a business perspective. And of course, we have to limit that. There's only so much space downtown, and we have to make sure that what happens there is in the best interest of our attendees. And so it is a great thing. It's so funny. It's the one time during the festival that I can be anonymous. And I literally, once everybody gets parked, and I know that's about 7:00 in the evening, everybody's parked. And I know all of the logistic issues have been resolved at that point. And I can just walk up and down and just enjoy seeing people having fun, checking out the Jeeps, and just kind of taking it all in and feeling really proud that our team is pulled together to pull it off yet again.
It is a incredibly unique experience. And I don't always make it a priority to go downtown. I do it every couple of years or so, every few years. But I think it's fascinating because my favorite part of it is right as the night gets long, right? You kind of feel like you've kind of been there long enough, but then all the lights are kind of come on and it's pitch black and being at one end and looking down it and just seeing all the Jeeps, this really cool mesh of humans having just an amazing time, like literally living their best Jeep life, and vehicles are pulling out safely. I'm almost always safely because they have to drive through crowds. It's an undertaking, and it's a respect of your mutual Jeeper. Every once in a while you get a bonehead who does something silly or whatever, but that's a little bit life. That's the risk we take by going to these events. But you look and the lights, the street lights are all on, the storefront lights, the food, the smell of food, the music's still playing. It's really cool experience to be there, right as that kind of hits that tipping point of like everybody starting to leave for the evening. That's a cool experience,
Neil's mom also asked another good question. Since you talked about all the businesses that partner and everything like that, what are the financial benefits to the town from the event?
Financially, really it's the businesses in the town who really, they benefit. This is a great way for them to be involved in the festival. All the restaurants, the shops, the bars, the breweries, all of those that are open that night. Jeep, I've had many of them tell me, the night of the Jeep invasion is their busiest day of the year. It's not Christmas, it's not other events, it's the Jeep invasion. And they look forward to it just as much as, the 1,000 Jeeps who come to it. And, they do really well. All the retailers, they all do great. And
So-
so it's a great economic boon to the town. And the festival is a great economic boon to the whole county, and actually more than the county, because Cooper's Lake is right on the corner of 3 counties. So there's 3 counties where people camp, people stay in hotels, people eat, people buy gas, people buy groceries. So, we're really having a great impact on the local community's economy as well. So, when you think about this event and you think about, what we do and how we do it, and, our goal obviously is to have an amazing experience for everybody who attends Bantam. But when you think about that whole ripple effect of how we also are a huge driver of economic opportunity that weekend for the community, it really does make you feel that we're doing something good.
Do you feel like the local businesses largely support the event? Do you get much pushback from any? I'm asking a question from the standpoint of, certainly, we're from small town America as a whole, and I know that a couple of our community events have fallen by the wayside, largely because a number of businesses have been vocal about their frustrations. So the businesses that support it seem to support it fervently and be like, yeah, this is a boom to our business. But then there have been some specifically to our downtown area that have had so much pushback, they just don't even do events there anymore in our local area. Obviously, what did it take, or how did you guys overcome that? Because I'm willing to bet there was a couple businesses who were like, hey, I don't want this to happen in front of my storefront. Or did you not feel like that happened?
I can't say, Neil, that I remember ever having any major pushback when we started. I think people were just excited that this new event was coming and what was it going to be. And I think people were afraid, having 1,000 Jeeps all parked together on one street. What kind of litter are we going to have? Are there going to be fights? What kinds of things are going to happen here? And I'm really proud to say that our police department has told me that the Jeep invasion is one of the best events. There's no litter. There's really never, I don't know of any arrest that has ever been made with the thousands and thousands and thousands of people
I'm
who've
knocking
been
on
there.
wood for you right now.
Yeah, knock
Knocking
on
on wood.
wood, for sure. Because anything can change at a moment's notice. But,
Right?
Our community has really supported it. Now, there's people who work downtown and, they don't want to get caught because we close down the street. Main Street closes at 3:30, so we can get any cars who are parked on the street that weren't still supposed to be there. We have to get them off. So we have time to do that. The street sweeper goes through downtown, cleans the street up. We get all the food vendors in place. So we have to have the street closed early before all the Jeeps actually start coming in. And that means that those people who do work downtown who don't want to stay for the invasion, they do get caught up in that a little bit. So some of those companies, those employees do get a little bit frustrated, but by now they all know, they need to get out of town. A lot of the businesses, who aren't retail businesses or restaurants or whatever, a lot of just, business to business attorneys, doctor's offices, those kinds of things.
Sure.
They usually close early that Friday. So their employees can get out of town before we
Sure.
start taking over. But really, it's really, I think people really love it. And, because it's such a great event and there's so much positive things that happen as a result of it, we do have some great support. And I think that's because we got all of the real important organizations in the community involved very early on. The Tourism Bureau, the Chamber of Commerce, our Butler Downtown organization, as well as city officials, the mayor, city council. I can remember, this is, talking about the parade, I can remember this one year, I think it was, I don't remember which parade it was now, but the mayor knew in order for us to set a record, we could not have any other vehicles in the parade. They all had to be the Jeeps who were participating. And I was standing on the courthouse. It was pouring down rain. And this one Jeep, or this one car, somehow got onto a side street near the courthouse, and they were going to pull out onto Main Street. And the mayor literally went running down and literally pretty much threw himself on the hood of their car.
Oh,
So
boy.
they could not turn onto the main street where the parade was going on, because that would have destroyed our record.
Yeah.
So that kind of support and that kind of enthusiasm, that's just an example of, what our community does and thinks about the festival.
Oh, and you can definitely tell how everyone is invested including the participants, how they all want the event to go off without a hitch and make it fun. Again, same as you growing up in the classic car scene, I felt the weirdness feeling of like you're invading their space, where at Bantam everyone is part of the experience, and because of that you have a little bit of pride, and you don't want to leave litter, you don't want to cause a problem, you want to kind of make everyone kind of many hands carry, make light work kind of scenario.
Yeah.
And you can just feel that in that event versus a car event where they aren't part of the infrastructure of the area, and they're kind of competing for that space, for that event, and you can get more upset, or I can't think of the right word I want to use, but people can be a little bit more angry
Right.
and frustrated,
Right.
where here everyone's in it to win it kind of scenario.
It does feel that way.
Yeah,
Doesn't it? I mean, it's
100%.
it's remarkable. There doesn't seem to be too many petty betties out there who are,
Correct.
fussing and moaning because of the event happening. And again, I've met a bunch of volunteers who've absolutely, in the beginning, I kind of didn't understand because my world was so Jeep centric.
Yeah.
But there were so many volunteers who were like, "Oh yeah, no, this was just my church group," or not even that. It was just like, "This was just my Rotary," or whoever.
Yeah.
It was just people who were like, "Yeah, I just signed up to be a volunteer," and I was like, "So you have no connection to this festival?" And I thought, "Nope, I just want to see it happen for my
Yes.
community."
100%.
And I was like, "Wow, that is awesome!"
Mhm.
That is
We
awesome.
have members on our planning committee who don't own Jeeps, and they're doing exactly that. They love the event and they want to help support it. They don't have a Jeep, they don't have any interest in Jeeps, but they have an interest in the community, and they know what Bantam does, and they have a lot of pride in that. And so, we so appreciate that. Though we will never turn down volunteers for sure. And so, having their enthusiasm and participation when they don't have a Jeep at all, that says a lot.
Well, and I suppose the question is, while you're saying that, is there a way that people can get involved if they're listening to this and they're feeling so inclined?
So she cut out for a sec, so she may not have heard that.
Oh, did you hear me, Patti Jo, or do you want me to repeat myself?
I just heard the end about so inclined. That was
Well,
about it.
if you were mentioning the importance of the volunteers, I was asking, since we're on this subject, how can people get involved at this point? If they're listening and they're interested, how can they get involved? Are there opportunities, 1 month out from the event?
There are. We just ended pre-registration on Friday night because we actually customize the registration materials for every single person who registers. So this is a huge week for us because we have probably 24 volunteers in our office actually compiling packets. They're there right now working on it. And I was there all day yesterday working on it. But so we don't have it available on our website any longer, but if somebody wants to be involved, we certainly would love to have their help. They can just email us at info@bantam.org or reach out to us on the contact us section of the website. But at this point, the volunteer schedule is being finalized, but we always have places to plug other people in. So if there's somebody who would love to be part of this, you do get some great benefits for being a volunteer. We don't just take your help and let you walk away. We take care of you well. And, just email us at that info@bantam.org and we'll get you involved.
Okay. So what's new or different for this year that attendees, right? So now we're moving away from our volunteer base and our community base, but those attendees, what's something that they can be looking forward to?
We have a couple new things. We always try to have something new every year. For the people who like to go off-road and use the trails at Cooper's Lake and also at the Bantam Quarry at Kildew, which is property we purchased in 2020. It's about 235 acres. We have trail rides at both locations. This year, to kind of mix it up a little bit, we're running all of the trails backwards. So we tried that out at the quarry in the fall for our Bantam Trail Fest event as a test to see how did that work. And it worked amazingly, and we got fantastic feedback from the people who attended it. So we decided we were going to continue to implement that and also do it at Cooper's Lake. So that's going to provide a really different experience for everybody who's going to go off-road on the trails. We often do hear people say, gosh, even though we try our best to mix the trails up a little bit, we only have so much land. There's only so much available at Cooper's Lake. There's only so much at our property that we can use. And, that's one of the things we hear, how can you make your trails different? We want different trails. And unfortunately, we're limited. We just don't have expanses of wide open property like happens out west or whatever. So we try to do things. They're usually not huge, but we try to change the trails in some ways. But this year, it is pretty big. The fact that for the first time, we are going to be running everything backwards. So that's that.
I
Another
think
thing.
Neil has a question.
Oh, go for it.
He doesn't want to interrupt.
I didn't want to interrupt, but I feel really passionate about this particular subject, okay? And I want to make this on my official stance for you because I do know that you guys as an organization are largely feedback driven, right? Those surveys you were talking about. And I, I have opinions and, obviously I own a podcast or a couple of them so that people will listen to them. But here's the thing. First and foremost, the feedback that you guys receive are echo chambers because the people who are going to give feedback are a smaller pool than just all of the participants in general. This is first and foremost always what I tell people. So yes, feedback is incredibly valuable to help direct our ship. And so I encourage everyone who participates, who has an opportunity to review or give feedback, to do that. But the feedback comes back from a known population of people who is smaller than all the attendees. First and foremost, I always like to prime that conversation. 2, quit your crying about the trails, folks. Okay? Listen, here's the thing. You go to any other major show in the country, you get an obstacle course or a mud pit.
That's it.
I hate hearing people fuss and moan about Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival and for them to take an official stance to talk about the fact that, we want to make our trails enjoyable for everybody, blah, blah, blah. Stop it. You have trails. We have hundreds of acres at a large-scale national show, not just an obstacle course, not just a singular mud pit. Like,
They don't appreciate it because they didn't come back from when it was a one-day event and we had maybe 3 Jeep lengths of a mud pit.
yeah.
And
Everybody lined up for the same
maybe
mud
had
pit.
a teeter-totter.
I was gonna say you had the balance board,
and that was it.
Yeah.
So the very first year, I remember going on the obstacle course, and like you said, you guys didn't know what you didn't know because you didn't do it yet,
Right.
and it was still fun
Yes.
compared to what
Yes.
we came from before that. So again, another pat on the back for you guys. You do a good job, and you not only that, you've gone in and you've found volunteers that have the rigs that can run the trails,
Right.
that can maintain the trails. Hey, this would be fun. That speaks resoundingly.
And we're going to have Rob Morgan, who is the director of the off-road trails, both on site, which is Cooper Lake, and off, which is the quarry. But listen, folks, you don't get to go to Anthracite Off-Road. You don't get to go out to Moab. They're closing our trails constantly out west. You don't get to go to any of these other large-scale parks regularly and be like, oh, the trails changed so much. I've been running the same 3 trails at Southington Off-Road for 15 years.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
I'm just glad to be able to do it.
Yeah. I'm just glad to do it. And the fact that Bantam is so responsive to our needs to be like, we should find something more engaging about our trails. No, we as a community should appreciate the fact that you have a show where you can talk to vendors face to face, where you can buy discounted product, you can participate in a show and shine, you can have the largest nighttime invasion in the country of sorts in a small town America, and you get to wheel.
Oh, you
Dude.
forgot about the Barbie Jeep races.
Yeah, you get to throw yourself off the side of a hill at top speed, and
And you get to
Fuck
go
Jesus.
see military encampment. You
Yeah.
get to go see the history exhibit and talk to knowledgeable people about the history. You get to see vehicles you may never see.
there's not a
again.
show in the country that does all of these things.
Yes.
There's not. And that is what we should be proud about and not constantly talk about
here,
things we're not
here
doing.
in Cognac, we have a reenactment, and it almost cripples the town.
Yeah.
And it's just one part that you guys have.
Yes. All right, Patti Jo, I'm sorry. You have like 4 minutes left.
I'm going to jump real quick. We have a question saying they just got in. When and where is the event? So if you could reiterate that for us.
Absolutely. Bantam is held at Cooper's Lake Campground. It is in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, about an hour north of Pittsburgh. It is located on the intersection of Interstate 79 and Route 422. So we're about half an hour from the Ohio border in Western Pennsylvania. that's, we've been there since 2013, and we really have really used that property to the best of our abilities. So
Absolutely.
we did end our pre-registration, as I mentioned, on Friday, but we will be launching a will call registration probably this Friday. As soon as we get these registration packets and get everybody who pre-registered, we get them all taken care of, we will launch a will call. What that means is you'll be able to still register for any events that are still have capacity. We will have your packet ready for you, but you will be able to just grab it and go whenever you arrive at Bantam. We will not mail those out to you in advance. So that will happen for a short period of time. We also do have on-site registration. It'll open at 8 o'clock each morning of the event, June 13th through 15th. So there's two more, if you miss pre-registration, it's okay. You can still bring your Jeep and be part of Bantam with those other 2 registration opportunities that are coming up.
Cool. Was there anything because I had interrupted you without exactly interrupting you. Was there anything else that people can explicitly be looking forward to this year?
Well, I think our Bantam Misfits, Simpson Family Jeeps is
Hey!
sponsoring the Bantam Misfits this year.
That is true.
This is going to happen Sunday morning. It is just a fun kind of twist on the Best of Bantam, like a car show. We did this a different name years ago, and it's kind of it didn't take off that well. So we actually decided to bring it back this year because that in our feedback, there were some people who requested this. So like we listened to our attendees, we're bringing it back. And, Neil, you guys are going to take over. You're going to do the judging for it. But we have 5 different categories, such as, the oldest civilian military Jeep, the most patriotic Jeep. There's 5 different categories that you can sign up for to compete with your Jeep and win a trophy. And this will be the first year of this, and hopefully it'll, be successful, and we'll get some good feedback.
And I think everybody needs to get involved in it because it's like it's a show and shine out of my personal heart because I'm really not here for like the actual real show and shine stuff. Like that's just not of specific interest to me.
We're too functional.
Yeah, I'm too functionally minded, and I get it. I have an appreciation for the show and shine. I can understand a person's value or how they feel appreciated via their vehicle. I can get all that, but I love if you use the vehicle, and it's used, abused. Maybe if you kind of kept it on the road, there's a bunch of stuff, and if you take care of it, that's just a bonus as well. Very cool. Make sure you get involved, people who are listening.
Nate has also said the Babes of Bantam Trail Ride. His wife has done that every year since it's been available, and the level 2 version last year. But also,
I think that is and I know you have something. Go ahead, process that real quick. I think that is a unique piece that Bantam has such an eclectic or a diverse group of people who come because we do actually pull from Pittsburgh. So you have oftentimes a lot of our Jeep shows are more rural inspired is my experience. And that's not to say the bigger ones. I understand the bigger ones are whatever, but we get, a group of people that come out of Pittsburgh who really get to feel appreciated in the Jeep life, and women serve a very large role in their being able to utilize their Jeep and feel comfortable, both wheeling and showing and being, a valuable part of this experience. I think is a really cool thing that Bantam does too.
As a last minute bonus question, our Savage, the media manager here, wants to know, out of curiosity, has there been any discussion or consideration around SFJ 4x4 getting its own golf cart at some point in the future?
And you are on air right now.
SFJ is going to steal my golf cart for their personal use when they get a chance. Because of that, I never leave my key in my golf cart anymore. But that didn't stop you guys because you picked it up and hid it behind another booth.
Yes.
That may have happened.
May or may not have happened. Can't confirm.
The last piece here too is that you didn't specify, but general public can attend just to look around, right? You don't have to be registered.
Yes, thanks for asking. Yes, we do have what we call just general admission. You can come in all 3 days and walk around, see all those things you guys talked about, the history exhibit, the playground, the mud pit, all the vendors. All of those things that we offer, the encampment. This year we have an epic Willie's Jeep encampment too. So all of that's there. It's $10 for adults to come in for the day and enjoy everything, do some shopping and get that. I tell people that if you didn't have a Jeep before you came to Bantam, you spend the day walking around, talking to Jeep owners, talking to our vendors and sponsors. You're going to want a Jeep by the time you leave.
Is there anything you didn't get to share because of me being a loudmouth?
No, we'd love to talk about it. Our website is bantamjeepfestival.com. So as I mentioned, there's still time to attend and join the event. There's still time to volunteer. So, check us out. And this team here from Simpson will be there loud and strong, and great booth location. So you won't be able to miss them, and come interact with them as well.
Thank you so much, Patti Jo, for joining us. Folks, if you are, again, we our broadcast globally, and we appreciate all of our listeners wherever they're at in the world. And at one time, there was a lot of international interest in this specific show as far as Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival. So don't let that be a reason to be like, oh, well, it's in the States. Don't let that be a reason for you not to come. There's plenty of people that I've met over the years who were from across the pond in some capacity. So put it on your bucket list. If not this year, then in the future. As I mentioned, in about 2 or 3 weeks, we'll have Rob Morgan, the director of Trails, on to to kind of talk about his experience and what that off-road experience will be for all the participants this year. Anything left else to say? Folks, we had a great time with you, and I hope that you enjoyed hearing from Patti Jo herself. If you are interested in volunteering, make sure you reach out to them regarding that email address that she shared, or if you are still wanting to, register to attend. And if you miss all of that, you can still stop in for just the day and, pay $10, which is, less than lunch anymore, and you get an entire full day of entertainment. You can come in and enjoy yourself and be part of the Jeep life. This was a rocking good time. Until next time, Jeep on.
Jeep
Jeep on. And we are back for our weekend updates, but I think Patti Jo is signed off.
You kicked her off
Well,
that fast.
That was right at the time she needed to leave anyway.
Yep. Yeah, because
Perfect.
she said she had till about 11:30 for a meeting.
So gives her an
Perfect.
appropriate amount of time to transfer over.
Yep.
Yes. Make her 11:30.
So what did you do over the weekend other than prepare the ark for the amount of rain that we've gotten?
I keep trying to build on my arc. I'm not, but I apparently am not devoted enough to stand out in the wetness and
I mean, I
cold.
saw some Facebook updates from you, and I thought that looked really fun.
Yeah. So a huge shout out to both personal friend and friend of the business, the Angry Turtle, for his philanthropic pursuit to get myself out of the normalcy,
your comfort zone.
Yeah, well, and it's just like I'm always have so many irons in the fire. It's hard to have my feelers out for all the different unique experiences that could be out there. And fortunately, he's pretty good at kind of being a bird on my shoulder, being like, "Hey, this seems like kind of cool. Like we should do this." Did they get to hear that too, or am I just? What did you do?
I switched us back to our main screen
Oh,
since Patti Jo was no longer with us.
I just okay.
So
Did they hear the goat, or did I just do it for them?
I think they heard the goat.
So anyways, so Jason coordinated a group to ride the 765, and that is a beautiful restored steam locomotive that is currently owned by the Indiana Rail Historical Society. It is a fairly famous steam engine because it is on the larger side, and it can pretty much go anywhere around the Great Lakes region. And so it's well photographed, well documented. It's kind of a air quotes famous steam locomotive because of where it's geographically located. It gets kind of shared or rented out to a couple different locations. In fact, I'm fairly certain you talk oftentimes before Chuck became Chuck, before he kind of grew up. When I first got Chuck, that I believe the 765 came through town, and I actually have a picture with I took it, and I knew the route that it would be going. And oftentimes you'll get these massive gatherings around the crossing gates. And it'll be hard. There'll be a group of people that'll kind of squish into the most arguably easy to access and ideally, ideal little locations. Well, anyways, we ended up going out to this one crossing that my wife and I were together, and we raced out of town, and we hit the crossing, and there was nobody there, not a soul.
Oh.
And so I pulled Chuck up, what would be for other people uncomfortably close,
Of course.
to the train tracks, and had it. And so as the 765, and I'm fairly certain, so as the steam locomotive came by, you got this beautiful black locomotive with the steam coming out, and Chuck Norris sitting at the that right angle and snapped a picture of it. It was pretty epic in my
Awesome.
opinion. But anyways, we got to ride it, and then the piece that I'm really hung up on is kind of cool is that Barnum and Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Ringling Brothers Circus was still utilizing the train to transport their circus up to 2017. And it was a pretty famous piece for a lot of your larger populated areas. And so even in Cleveland, Ohio, the train would actually stop. They would stop the train cars. They would unload the elephants and other circus performers. They would actually get in full garb, and they would march through town.
That's cool.
And there was from a specific train yard to, at that time, which was the Coliseum. And they not only did this in Cleveland, but a number of other urban centers. And so it was a thing when people actually appreciated circuses. And when that disbanded, the cars eventually sat dormant, were scrapped, sold, whatever. This historical society, because they did this in Indiana as well, this historical society bought 2 of those cars and had converted them to open air lounges.
Mhm.
So a really cool kind of bougie, kind of speakeasy feel to them. And we had the opportunity to ride on those converted cars, and they call them the Cage, and they have all this elephant-inspired decor. But then they literally have plush couches with a little electric fireplaces running.
Nice.
So while they're open air cars, you can sit and sit next to this little electric fireplace, and there's cafe cars, so there's coffee and hot chocolate and adult beverages, and then the best hot dogs I've ever had at a concessionary situation.
Better than gas station hot dogs?
Better than gas station hot
Wow,
dogs. That's saying something for me too,
right?
I do love gas station hot dogs. So it comes to find out, I actually just prefer train hot dogs more. So, train car hot dogs. So yeah, it was a really cool gathering of us. It's called Steam in the Valley by the Cuyahoga Historical Society, and we rode the Cuyahoga National Forest Valley. You go about an hour and a half out and an hour back in. More or less on the ride. But, it's just kind of a testament to how humans are just grown-up children. They get you off the train about 20 minutes into your ride, and they back up the train. So they literally stop. They get, and I don't know how many people fit on this train. It's like 7,500 people per car. Maybe there's 8 cars. I don't know. I don't want to totally elaborate. But several hundred people get off the train just so they can back it up around this bend. They fire it up, and so there's like these just puffs of smoke coming up out of the tree line, and they literally just come roaring past you. Put the brakes on, back it up again, just to come roaring past you. It's literally just a flyby for the train, so that we as grown-up children
Can enjoy the train.
enjoy the train going by. And then they back it up and they reboard everybody. And it's so cool because they were so well organized. When we talk about the events and stuff and what it takes to make this stuff come off the ground, they let us cross over the tracks, but then they had appropriate roping to make sure that everybody stayed, safe as possible. And then after they do the first drive-by and they back it up, they let everybody switch around so you can get a different vantage point for your pictures and your video. Awesome. And it was just really cool, It was like kids playing on the train tracks again, but with the real deal.
That's fun.
It was fun. So nice family adventure in the in the Cleveland area.
Joe says
Playing with-
it's called a photo run by.
It is absolutely called a photo run by. It was a very cool experience.
As a side note, in the comments, I see Michael saying that Jeepcast is bringing the LS Race Jeep to Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival again this year, assuming they don't break everything at the stops on the way to Butler.
Fair.
So we'll have to link up with Gary and Gary again and get them back on our show.
Yeah. See how that trip how that trip comes along for them too. It'll be interesting, fun to follow along in that process.
Yeah, I'll have to reach out to them and see if they're going to be around for the whole weekend and try to schedule that with them.
And Andrew is mentioning, have we ever seen the steam powered Jeep? Now I want. Oh man, we talk about I was there, Andrew, when the steam powered Jeep was released by Kenny, and so here's the two things about that, and I'll try not to go off on a complete and absolute tangent. I thought it was very unique. I thought it was pleasant. I was indifferent. You know what I mean? Like if you want to do, crazy over the top a build that's got lights and sound and huge 54s like the Kraken used to have, cool, have at it. If you want this, slinky, buggy inspired gnarly off-road vehicle, have at it. If you just ever want to listen to music and have plush leather interior in your Jeep, cool, have at it, right? So the steam engine, steam Jeep, cool, whatever. The problem was he would go to shows and the vendors who were immediately around the steam Jeep, they would fire it up and he would blow off the steam and blow the horns and stuff, which was very entertaining for the participants. But for the vendors, they were constantly subjected to a non-conducive environment, something that's kind of above and beyond.
There's somebody still having trauma triggers from
There
this.
is, and actually, there was a particular show. I won't go on to elaborate it. There was a particular show out east that it actually almost came to fisticuffs with the ownership of that particular Jeep and some of the other vendors, because it just didn't seem to be being done in a respectful manner. Kind of interesting. Twofold. One, and I need to say this for Jason's purposes because he has some safety certification stuff that I'm completely absolved of. That boilers are dangerous, folks.
Oh yeah.
And that when questioned by some historical steam society blah 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 stuff, it come to find out that Jeep might not have been the safest thing to have within close proximity
To be cuddling with.
So interesting to see. I was there. I remember when it was debuted. I knew the Jeep. I knew the whole situation. I wasn't close to it, so I thought it was cool, But hindsight's 2020, and maybe it wasn't for everybody who was close to it. So I'm sorry. There's my two pieces. I had a great weekend. Family had a great weekend, except for the if I have to be a curmudgeon about something, is the cold, wet rain spring that just won't go away.
Yep.
You all, how'd you,
Scott?
So I decided to sweep the rain out of my garage, which involved firing up the 36, backing it out when the 2 seconds it didn't rain.
Sweep the rain.
Out of the garage. So then I decided I was going to fire it back up, to which the car was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So
I'm sorry to hear that.
Used the starter to crank the thing in because wasn't pushing it at that point. I was too frustrated.
Why
at
did
it.
the car not want to run?
So I went out Sunday and pulled the plugs and looked at it, and old school motor, dual carb life.
You're having a flathead dual carb issue, aren't you?
So
You get
plugs,
to drive it. You get to drive it for 1 hour and 10 hours of maintenance.
sometimes. So plugs looked a little angry. So I went ahead and sandblasted those and cleaned them up, and then the car ran again.
Oh,
Yay.
go figure.
So I spent the rest of the time measuring thread depth and conversing with my flathead buddy of reach and heat ranges and all kinds of other stuff, so we can continue to make the car better. But at this point, at this exact moment, it is running again if we ever get a clear day to drive it.
Yeah. Hear that. Do you have all your windows in the car now?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a nice piece to start the year out with.
Yep.
Because I know that was a big, I don't want to say a contention, but a big.
It's a process.
It was a big process. I think
Yes.
that's appropriate. It was a process last year into this year. And,
Yep. 100%.
I'm glad to hear that they're all fitting well and
Yep.
and appropriate at this
It's
time.
it's still not the best foul weather vehicle because the insert, for those that don't know, the middle of the car has a piece of canvas, and it is 89 or so years old, so it is a little bit threadbare. So there is some spots where rain would get you if you were out in the rain.
Camp dry.
So
Camp dry.
one of these days I got to replace that insert. So then maybe we'll see if the wipers work.
Oh,
Oh boy.
haven't even tested
Well,
that, huh?
well, I know they'll work. I'm just saying, like, yeah,
Yeah.
then it'll be rain ready. But
Makes sense.
Perfect.
I unfortunately was sick all weekend, so I did not do much. But my wife did get me a new shirt, and I'm sad that Patti Jo is not still on air for this. But it is a I don't give a duck shirt.
But you do give ducks.
I don't give ducks. I get pelted by ducks driving down the road.
Oh, okay. So for all of our loyal listeners out there, Jeffrey's anti-duck.
I'm not
You can
anti-duck.
send your hate mail to JE.
I think everyone needs to send Jeff a duck.
All right.
I have a lot of
Those
ducks.
of you who are going to be attending Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival.
Oh.
There we go.
Now it has been born.
Yes.
Yet again.
Get Jeff a duck.
Jeff would like his Jeep to be ducked. So it looks like Jeff's Jeep will be in the booth yet again.
Well, if it's not there, then you just duck Jeff.
You could just duck Jeff.
And then he'll have extra ducks so he can duck others and spread the
You know
love.
what we should do? We should make shirts with targets on the back for ducks.
Oh, gosh.
We could just wear those shirts all weekend.
In that bombshell, we now know that Jeff wants to be pelted with ducks.
Jeff has revealed a new level of interest to himself. He would like to be
I would-
punished by the
But
duck
I really think it'd be funny to just see Neil getting pelted by the ducks.
in the middle of a conversation, like a challenging customer.
Which really just means Jeff just wants to pelt you with
Yeah,
ducks.
right.
Well, there
I
was that
was-
video where I was getting pelted by ducks, and
You
I
weren't
do
getting pelted, you big whiner.
it got you in the eye. So
I did totally think that I might have to attend this year's Bantam with a Nerf gun. So
Oh boy.
it's just may or may not be a thing. All right, folks. Well, I hope that you enjoyed our conversation about Bantam Jeep Heritage Festival. Found it informative, and I certainly know that I always like hearing from Patti Jo and kind of understanding what 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 that organization has done for the history of Jeep and what it will hopefully continue to do long into the future for the Jeep community as a whole. Make sure you check back next week. Jeffrey, do you remember what we're talking about next week? I'd gotten all jazzed up on this subject, and I have forgotten it now.
I have it in our notes.
Yeah,
somewhere.
you do.
I just
it's
don't-
going to be good, folks. I promise you. And then on the 19th, we'll be talking with Rob Daddy Jeep Morgan about the trails, all in preparation of this big festival that's coming up.
Well, and you stay tuned for that, because then we also have an interview scheduled that will air for Memorial Day.
Right. We will not be in studio, but we should have something for you so that even on your Memorial Day, you can still kind of enjoy in the Jeep life with us.
Whoa, Jeannie said they have duck